You're listening to Mike Adams and Chris Savory, the record collectors from the BBC, between now and 9 tonight.
Well, that was the title track of a brand new album that's come out recently called Earth Song from Mary Hopkin. Not quite brand new, because those of us who are a little older in the tooth will remember it coming out in the 70s, 1971, on the Apple label. Mary's guesting on the programme tonight. Welcome to the Record Collectors.
Oh, thank you.
It's a long time since we've heard from you, Mary, and it's a great pleasure that you've decided to come on our show.
Oh, well, my pleasure.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you got involved with the Apple record label?
Yes, well, I was 18 at the time, and I was working away at school in Wales, and appeared on a television programme. I'd been doing some folk television programmes in Wales in the Welsh language, and a local agent put my name forward for opportunity knocks, which I was very reluctant to do at the time, but he thought the experience might be very good for me, just to attend the audition, which I finally did, and ended up doing the show. And Twiggy, the model, was watching the first show. And a couple of days later, she was chatting to Paul McCartney, who was starting up the new Apple label with the other Beatles. And she mentioned that she'd seen me, and so they sent a telegram and got me up to London and signed me up. So it was all very sudden.
You weren't new to recording, because you actually worked for the Cambrian label, which is a Welsh language record label, and you made an EP there, didn't you?
That's right, I did, yes. I made that when I was about 16, yes. Pant Tower.
Pant means bridge, doesn't it?
That's right. It's bridge on the River Tower.
So what was your first meeting with Paul McCartney like?
Oh, well, very exciting. I mean, the Beatles were my idols. You know, I'd adored them since I was 13 years old. So it was a big thrill for me to meet Paul, obviously. So, I mean, he was great. He listened to my singing. He hadn't actually heard me sing. So we went to a little demo studio, and I made some demos there of the folk songs I was doing at the time. And he must have been pleased, because he signed me up. And about 3 weeks later, he played a song he'd had for years, sort of about 10 years, and was looking for the right singer. And he played Those Were the Days.
Was that a Russian folk song originally?
Yes, it was, yes.
And did Paul write the lyrics to it?
No, an American called Gene Raskin wrote the words.
Were you surprised with the phenomenal success of that particular record, because it stormed the charts globally?
Yes, well, yes, it was quite amazing. Yes, it was a very exciting time for me, because it all happened so quickly, so suddenly.
What were their views at the time, I mean, John Lennon and Paul McCartney particularly, of how they saw Apple developing? I mean, you were at the very start with Jackie Lomax and, of course, the Beatles themselves of this record label.
Yes.
Did they give you any clues to their thoughts for the future of the label?
At the time, well, I went through the whole thing in rather haze, because it was all very exciting for me. So I knew nothing about the politics of or the business side of things. I'm sure that the Beatles wanted to start a record company run by musicians for musicians, which is all wonderful. You know, it's very idealistic. I think in practice it's much more difficult, because you need really excellent businessmen to run a place. And I think probably that was the major problem. I had a lot of friends working there who weren't possibly qualified. You know, some were, some weren't.
Have you any particular memories of people that you met there?
Oh, yes. Well, they were all lovely to me. I mean, it was like my second home after a while. I spent, just about every day up at the Apple offices. And Derek Taylor, the press officer there, was wonderful. He's still a good friend. And there were some very nice people there. And but as I said, I didn't get involved in the business side, so I was terribly unaware of what was going on behind the scenes.
You went off to America shortly afterwards, didn't you, to appear on the Ed Sullivan Show?
That's right, yes.
And, of course, Those Were the Days was, if I remember, kept off the top by the Beatles themselves in the American charts. You were number 2 for weeks, weren't you?
That's right, yes. Yes.
Your boss was keeping you off the number 1 slot.
Yes, how dare they?
The Postcard album, which you did with, was that with Donovan and Harry Nilsson?
Oh, on the Postcard album,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Harry Nilsson wrote a song called The Puppy Song.
Yes.
Paul asked various people to write songs for the album. And Donovan wrote 2 beautiful songs, which I really enjoyed singing.
Let's look at the album which I have in front of me, because I've just played the title song, Earth Song, already. Let's hear Ocean Song. We've had the Earth, and here's the Ocean. And that was Mary Hopkin and the Ocean Song from the album called Earth Song, featuring Mary Hopkin, which has been re-released on the Apple label. And we've got Mary on the line to us. By the way, that record number is CDP 7986952 and is available on all major record stores. Let's go back to the days of Apple, if we may. You worked with, of course, Tony Visconti, who was a major record producer at the time. I think you married him.
I did, yes.
Tony worked closely with the Beatles. What was working with Tony like initially?
Well, it was very good, because what had happened was, after I finished working with Paul McCartney, who was obviously very busy with the Beatles, the company found me another producer who turned out to be Mickey Most, and that didn't work out too well from my point of view, because the sort of material Mickey chose, although it was very commercial material, it wasn't the sort of direction I wanted to go in. So I decided I wanted another producer, and came up with Tony, who I'd heard a Strawbs album that Tony had produced, and loved the production on that. It was very understated and sensitive. So we approached Tony as a producer, and we made Earth Song, Ocean Song, which I'm really pleased with. And Tony introduced me to Ralph McTell and Danny Thompson and Dave Cousins of the Strawbs, who play on the album, and they're excellent musicians. And so it was a lovely experience.
What were the studios like at Apple? Were they the basement studios at Savile Row?
Yes, that's right. I never actually worked there. They were being built while, quite after we moved into Savile Row. So I never actually worked there. I worked at EMI and at Trident Studios in London.
So that's where you recorded most of your hits, effectively?
Yes, yes.
You also did a McCartney-produced revival of Doris Day's Que Sera Sera, which did quite well in America, didn't it?
Yes. That was Paul's idea. I wasn't too keen on it. It was good fun at the time, but I didn't really want it released in this country.
And can you tell us why?
Well, it should be obvious, but it was a very bubbly little song. I did, in fact, love that when I was a little girl. When I was about 5, I used to sing it, but it was a little embarrassing at 18, especially when I wanted to do more the kind of material that you hear on Earth Song now.
Right.
More sort of environmental themes, a little more serious than that.
Let's talk about perhaps George Harrison, Ringo. Did you meet George very often or not?
Yes, well, they were all around, you know. So, I mean, obviously I worked with Paul, but when I did meet the other Beatles, they were always very sweet to me.
Do you have any favourite Beatles songs that you recall from that era that you personally liked?
Oh, my goodness. Good grief. I mean, all of them. I mean, they wrote such wonderful songs between them. You know, I couldn't... it would take all day to listen to the ones I like. They're marvellous songwriters.
Let's move on from the Apple period, because I'm going to share with our listener another track of Earth Song, and I will feature How Come the Sun in a moment. But since then, let's quickly move up to date with what's been happening. I know that you worked with a band called Sundance with Mike Hurst in the late 70s, early 80s, I think.
That's right, yes.
And then you went on to work with Dr. Hook, I think, or did a tour with Dr. Hook.
We toured with Dr. Hook, yes. Mm.
And there was a marvellous album which I recommend to everybody they can still get their hands on it, and who wants a little bit of culture, and that is the album which is called simply Under Milkwood by Dylan Thomas.
Well, it's the first voice on it is Anthony Hopkins, who, of course, is very popular now.
Very, very big. Can we ask what you're doing currently?
I'm concentrating on songwriting, which I'm enjoying very much. And I hope to be writing for films and documentaries. It's a more behind-the-scenes career, really, but since I don't enjoy performing a great deal, certainly not at the moment anyway, it's lovely to be able to write my own songs.
Would this mean we may not see you on television or hear on the radio very often in the foreseeable future?
Well, probably not in the near future. I'm really enjoying the songwriting, and I'd prefer to concentrate on that. But I do love the singing, so I get to sing on the songs I write. So, I mean, there's a possibility that if there's a single released or something, I might do some television.
You've always had a great empathy with nature and the earth, something which you share with Paul McCartney. There seems to be a common thing long before Greenpeace and long before we see the whole green issue rising. But you've always had that empathy. Will this be still showing in the new work that you're writing currently?
Well, it is, strangely enough. That's why I can still identify with the Apple, this current album that's released, because the songs haven't dated and they do have a sort of environmental theme, as you hear from How Come the Sun. And yes, I suppose the music I write now is, I suppose, in that direction. Yes.
Well, we'll have that to look forward to, Mary. Before I play How Come the Sun, tell me a little bit about your reassociation with George Martin, because you worked with him a couple of years back, didn't you?
That's right, yes. Well, he's wonderful to work with. I thoroughly enjoyed that. I'd worked with him previously in Apple days when he wrote one of the songs for the Postcard album, and he arranged some of the tracks on that album.
Have you changed very much?
George, no, he's wonderful. Very handsome and lovely man.
Mary, every strength to your arm with your writing. We do hope we have the pleasure of hearing you and seeing you more.
Fine, thank you very much.
On behalf of the record collectors, here is How Come the Sun from Mary Hopkin and the Earth Song album. That's it. I've switched the tape off now.